Listen to the best wrestling podcast in the world. Journey into Wrestling every other Wednesday on the Journey into Comics Network.
The following
is a Journey into Comics.
Journey into Comics.
It's a Journey into Comics.
It's a Journey into Comics.
Journey into Comics.
Journey into Comics
Network.
Production. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is, I don't even remember the episode number. I think it's episode 12 of Puhr 360. I'll have to double check that. I'll maybe fix myself because I didn't check after the whole thing happened with that Fool's Week. So obviously last week it wasn't me doing Puhr 360. It was someone else. So it kind of interrupted my little pet series. But we're back, and this, like I told you guys on Facebook, is going to be on Fishkeeping and the aquarium hobby, and I'm pleased to have a good friend that actually found out was also into this, which is Tyler. How you doing, Tyler?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's a Sunday night. It's been a long weekend, but kind of ready to get back in the whole fun work week situation. But you actually had to work a little this weekend, so
yep. This is my 1 day weekend, so I had to make the most of it.
Right. But yeah, so I guess kind of first things, because I didn't realize, as I was getting into this thing, I didn't realize you were a part of it until, like, I started seeing you like random fish-related things on Facebook.
Yeah,
it was like, Tyler likes Aqueon. I was like, well, that's random. And it was just like, all this other random stuff. So, like,
it's fun.
It wasn't until yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I keep interrupting.
It's all right. It's funny how we kind of stumbled onto it, because I didn't know that you were into it until I had seen you post something in a group that I wasn't even a member of yet, but because you and I are Facebook friends, I got to see, like, outside looking into that closed Fishkeeping group, and I was like, I started scrolling through it, and you messaged me that later that day, and you're like, "Hey, do you keep fish?" Yes. yeah. I have some aquarium stuff. So
I was like, how does this, like, because it just never came up, because it doesn't come up in conversation ever. Like, no one's like, "Oh, what are your friends? What are your hobbies? Do you like keep fish?" Like, no one asks you that. It's just odd. And I haven't been in it that long. Like, I got into it through Liz, and then it just opened a door, like, in September of last year, because Liz, like, moved in and, like, brought her betta fish, and I was like, and then the betta fish died, and I was like, well, we need to get something else to replace it, and then it was just a domino effect. But I don't know, what was it for you?
So I kind of ran the whole gauntlet when I was a kid. I mean, I had obviously dogs and cats, and I had livestock, and then like every little boy, I wanted lizards and turtles, and then it was I won some goldfish at the fair. Let's try and keep this goldfish. And then I got out of the aquarium hobby for, I want to say almost 10 years. And then I was at work at my previous employer's one night. It was like 1:30 in the morning, and one of the guys that I was working with was talking about a bunch of African cichlids that he had that just spawned. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't really know anything about African cichlids, but I was like, I like fish. I mean, I love anything that has to do with water recreation or, water ecosystems. I just love the ocean and rivers and lakes. So I was instantly interested in the conversation. And he's like, yeah, I've got a man cave with a smaller tank in it that I'm looking to get rid of. And originally, I was going to buy that tank, sell the fish, and do like a micro reef setup. And once I got it, I was like, I love the fish that are in this tank. Why would I get rid of something that's making me happy? So I bought a pretty much complete setup from him, other than the stand. I bought a 36-gallon bow front with a whole school of tiger barbs and a mature red-tailed black shark that was like 5.5 inches. I mean,
Okay.
he was pretty good size. And then, I played around with that tank for pretty much 3 years. Never had any issues with it. The only thing that I didn't do with it that I was really unhappy is I didn't plan it. I just hardscaped it the way that I wanted it. And then I was too afraid at that time to dive into the live plants. And I knew from having that tank and, it was upstairs in my daughter's bedroom, I really wanted to upgrade my tank size and bring it downstairs. So here in the last couple months, I upgraded to a 60 tall. And I wish when I bought the tank that it was labeled as a 60 tall, because it's a lot taller than I want it to be.
How tall is it? Like 2 feet?
Give me just 1 second. I'll tell you exactly how tall it is.
Yeah. So, while Tyler's doing that, so yeah, just kind of speaking how it actually happened was that as Tyler was getting into the whole that Facebook group and everything that I had joined because of a podcast that I had found when I was just searching for something about fishkeeping just to learn a little bit more. We found this. I found this guy who had a fish store and then had like a YouTube channel, but then he also had a podcast. So I kind of went into it very backwards. I was like, podcast? Oh, he has a YouTube channel, and I was like, oh, he sells stuff online, and then that was how I read it. And then that's one thing I was like, I think you showed me a picture of your tank, and I was like, the only place I keep hearing where that thing exists is through this guy. And I was like, do you listen to that aquarium co-op thing? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, what is happening?
Yeah, so that tank that I have is exactly 25 inches tall. So
Okay.
it's just slightly slightly wider than a 55, but it's like 1.5 times the height.
Right.
So that's where they got the extra 50 gallons. So I went into PetSmart like 3 days after PetSmart and Petco always do the $1 per gallon sale.
Right.
So it was a couple days after that sale, had ended, and I was like, man, because my daughter's tank upstairs, the 36, I had on top of a dresser. And I was like, man, if I'm going to get this bigger tank, I want to actually have a stand. And I had thought about building my own, because other than getting that extremely good deal from my coworker right away, much like you with the aquarium co-op, I dove right into aquarium co-op, the DIY aquarium DIY, and Dustin's fish tanks. And I have this tendency when I get involved into a hobby that then I just completely forget about anything else that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, man, do I build a stand? Do I just, buy one of these ensemble kits? And I had looked at the tank that I have now, and it was like $450 for everything, and I didn't want to spend $500 on a fish tank,
Right. It's just like I get that completely.
It's obnoxious what some of these tanks cost. I mean, and this is just a regular glass tank. It's not even anything acrylic.
Right.
But I just happened to kind of put that on the back burner for like 6 months, and I went back into that same PetSmart to get like some dog food or something, and they had the entire set on sale for like $159.
I'm like, oh, I can't.
I'm
getting that today.
I went home because I didn't have my truck. I drove my wife's vehicle to PetSmart. I went home, got my truck, and went back and got it. So I couldn't resist.
Just do tell your wife anything. You're just like, I'll be right back.
Well, I called one of my good friends, and I was like, hey, I need you to help me get this. And he's like, you bought a giant fish tank? And I said, it's not giant. It's just big enough that I can't carry it by myself.
Right.
So I recruited some help, and I set the stand and the tank up dry in this room, in my living room, and then it sat like that for almost a year. because I just wasn't ready to move my setup from upstairs down. So.
Right, because the 36 was the one you got from the guy you worked with. That was his extra tank.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, and then you finally got it set up, and then.
Yeah, so I kind of like power cycled it. I filled it up with water when I was pretty adamant that I was gonna do a planted tank this time around. I had slowly but surely been procuring the equipment that I needed, so I had a canister filter and a sponge filter set up on my tank upstairs, and I knew that when I set this bigger tank up, I didn't want to mess around with a canister filter anymore.
Right.
I mean, it worked flawlessly, never had any issues with it, but every time I needed to work on it, I had to worry about flooding my house, and sometimes, trying to get that thing primed was, I might as well have tried to win the lottery because I had better odds at doing that. Mm-hmm. And I stumbled on the Zis bubble biofilter that Corey imports and sells, and I saw that and I was like, man, I gotta have it. Because I had thought about making one out of a 2-liter bottle, like you see all the DIY videos on YouTube, and I was like, I gotta do it. So
they just don't look great, and you're like, then it's like this, and you're like, that's what I need. And it's just
well, as far as the sponge filters go, there's nothing about them that I don't like, and everybody complains that they're like an eyesore in a tank. They don't really bother me because when I look at my tank, even though I'm not happy with how I have it planted and scaped, even after I redid it last weekend or the weekend before, when I look at the tank, I'm looking at the plants and the driftwood that I have and the hardscape and the fish. So I have three filters set up in my tank right now. I've got the Zis. I have like it's one of the Hikari fine sponges. It's a small one, like a 30-gallon one, and then I've got a big, like 80-gallon sponge set up in the corner. I don't even notice them.
Yeah, really. I have ones in all of mine, and they're just, you put them and they're just there, and you kind of overlook them. Like someone could easily see it, but like you just like look past it when you look at them. At least how I do it.
Right. So, yeah, I know you and I have both been kind of tinkering with our setups over the last few weeks. I messed around with mine. I went to order a bunch of plants from the co-op, and they were all out of stock, so I ordered them from somewhere else. And I was really happy with my purchase that I made, but I ordered, I think, way too many plants. So now my tank is pretty much nothing but plants, and it's not overgrown, obviously, because they're all brand new plants.
But there's the inevitable, like 6 months from now, you're like, oh, their fish are just stuck in one spot now.
My tank is going to approach jungle status very quickly. But other than lighting and, rearranging the scape and what I really, I remember what I was going to say now. I was adamant that when I got this tank and it was time to set it up, that I was going to grow plants, but I was going to do it in sand. And I found this product. Give me just a second. I'll actually pull it up so I don't butcher the name.
Yeah, no problem.
So the brand Caribsea makes this mat called a Rhizomat, which is basically like, it's like plant fibers that they've woven together, and I think it might be out of production now, but I bought one while I was kind of gearing up for this tank, and it's like woven plant fibers together, or it's a big mat of woven plant fiber, and you're supposed to put it underneath the substrate, and then when you plant plants into whatever your substrate is, it gives plants that are heavy root feeders, so pretty much all of your stem plants, crypts. It gives them a better plate to root, or gives them a better place to kind of root and hold on to. And I only bought one, so it wasn't wide enough to fit my entire tank. And I put that on the right side of my tank, blended white and black sand together, and like the first 3 days that I had it, it looked fantastic. And then once I put fish in, they demolished it, and it's 99% white sand on top now. And it's like obnoxious. It's like the color of chalk. So,
that whitish grayish.
Yeah, so it's not super ideal. And here recently, when I rescaped, I thought, well, I'll get some Fluval stratum for my plants that are struggling and for the new plants, and I'll basically just pot those plants in that substrate. So, I dug a little cavity and then put the stratum in, planted it, and then capped that over with the sand that was already in the tank. And that worked out pretty well. My snails have done a pretty good job of disturbing that and making it so there's random assortments of stratum now on top of the sand. So the only thing I really need to do is add more hardscape and cap the sand that I have right now, and then I think this tank I'll be happy with it, and I won't have to tinker with it all the time.
Right. Has the project getting this all set up made you want to get another one, or are you pretty good with just... You still have the 36 upstairs, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's in my garage right now, cleaned out. So originally, like I said, when I got that tank, I was going to do a micro reef setup with like maybe a bonded pair of clownfish and some inverts and lots of live rock. And right now, I've spent so much time getting this the way that I want it that I don't want to bring another tank in here and then neglect this one that I have set up.
Right. You want to keep all your focus on this one.
Mm-hmm. So, in a couple of years when when we sell this house and move, and I can have a little bit more ideal setup.
Right.
Because this is in my living room right now on carpet. I took the time to make sure that the tank was level, and that the section of the floor that my tank is set up on can be load bearing. Because I've got 600 pounds of water, not including everything else that I've got.
Right.
But I've got an excess of power cables and everything snaked behind the aquarium stand, and it's not 100% my ideal setup. So when we get to HQ number 2, then I'll do like a small fish room, I think.
Right, just something that way you could set up wire so you don't have anything to. All the cords can either go up and get just out of the way, and you can lay it out how you want. And it'll give you a chance to rescape it because you're going to have to break that down anyway when you move it.
Right, yeah, since I'm an electrician, I'm super picky when it comes to cable management. So I recently canceled my cable service, and I've got coax cable and all kinds of stuff strung out from when I returned all their equipment the other day. And I can look at that right now, and it's driving me nuts because I can see it, So
yeah, I get that.
I don't want to do I follow quite a few hobbyists on YouTube because I don't necessarily like to just find one source of information and then say this is my go-to guy.
Right.
I have my favorite people, obviously, but a wealth of information is always a good thing. And I follow a lot of them that have 55 or 60 tanks in a fish room, and it's everything's on auto water change. And
yeah, that's
as much as I would like to have auto water changing, have an auto water changing system, I don't necessarily need 60 fish tanks to maintain.
Right. I feel like when you have that many, you're not enjoying any of them fully. You're like, because like I have 3, and I'm like, this is plenty. This is, and it didn't even happen that way. Like I literally, Liz had a little beta bowl. Like it was literally like probably a half gallon or less. It was just a typical bowl size. Had the 1 beta in it. It did fine. We chose just because it was going in the bedroom. We just upgraded it to like a 2 gallon. Big improvement over the little bowl.
Right.
Had a little tiny filter in it to circulate the water. It was good. Then the fish died. Like, oh, we should get other fish. And then we got another beta. And then the other beta didn't do well. So we just got like, I got a common pleco, which is rookie mistake number 1. Got like a platy and a molly, just colorful tropical fish. Mm-hmm. And then didn't have any experience. I didn't know anything about it at the time. I was just like, put water. I put this, we had like leftover like beta water conditioner. Just like, okay, condition the water, put it in there, good to go. And then like water turned color, like turned like yellow. The molly died. I was like, started doing some like research, and like I was just changing water like I feel like twice. I felt like I was doing it like every day. I was changing like half the water, and took the pleco back, and I realized like common pleco gets to be like 2 feet long. I'm like, oh, that's not ideal for this size tank. And then
Right.
like, this isn't gonna work. So I have an unfinished basement that was just like storage and stuff. So I was like, I started like using like OfferUp and like Craigslist and stuff, and I was like, oh, someone's getting rid of their 10-gallon tank for like, it had like the hood, the light, a filter, all this stuff, like $30. And I was like, all right. So I went and got that, and then I had it set up, and I was like, started doing my research about cycling. So I was just like, got like 4 neon tetras, threw them in there, and just started running it, just get it set up. And then eventually it was like, oh, okay, so let's bring it upstairs, and did that, and then had it up there and had it running fine, and then got through the wedding and stuff, and then I don't know what was up with the tank, but it, like something gave way. I don't know if it was just not perfectly level, but it just dumped 10 gallons of water onto my floor of the bedroom, which was like, oh, it was not good. Like, because like we went out to dinner and then came back, and it was just like just a ring of water, and I was like, uh-oh. So went out to get a shop vac, had to get a one of those carpet air dryers to put under the carpeting. I soaked up as much as I could. All the fish somehow survived.
Wow.
Like there was little like, from the amount that came out, it shifted the gravel enough, so there are all these little like divots in the gravel. So I fished them all out into a bucket. I had a 5-gallon in the basement that I was going to set up as like a QT tank eventually. So it was cycling. So I just threw like way too many fish in that. 'Cause, like, they just need to live right now, and then had to deal with all of this. And since I'm at 1 level, but I'm over like a crawl space, but like, so I just checked, like I peeled back the carpeting. I was like, got the sponge or like the carpet pad, make sure that was all dried out, and like I was like, I didn't suck up this much water. Like, where'd it go? And like I had to go into my crawl space. I'm like, oh, it just went straight. Yep, it's just here. Okay, could be worse. It didn't like get stuck in the subfloor, just soak into the wood. So
Right.
And then I was like, so the fish tank has not been upstairs. So like, I got a replacement 10-gallon, put all the stuff, the gravel, all that, set it up. Then I was like, okay. And then I have like OfferUp stuff on my phone, so I'll just randomly search for things, and it was like random guy who's like was taking care of like his buddy who died. Like he had a massive like fish room. Mm-hmm. It was like the whole bottom level of his house. He had crazy amount of tanks, and he had them all cleaned out and put outside that he was just gonna get rid of. So like $5 a tank for like the same price from like 5 gallons to like 40 gallons.
Wow.
$5. They were all like pre-drilled, which I was like, I didn't really want. But he didn't guarantee that they were gonna like, they could have a leak. I don't know. $5, take it, do it. So obviously, so I got a 30-gallon long. So I didn't really like the 29-gallon just because it was so tall.
Right.
So the 30 long, so it's like 3 feet by like 12 inches. And then like 18 inches high or something. So like, okay, that's a good size. So I got that. Had like 1 hole in the bottom. So I got with like a glass place to get a cut square. Mm-hmm. And I just siliconed it really well. And
nice.
Tested it for, cause it was a painted back, so I had to scrape all that paint off. So got that all done, and then got everyone transferred eventually. But since I did that, I've been like always keep an eye out for like offer up for like random stuff that people are giving away. Like I got some fry from some guys, some plants, like some like floating plants, and just it's been done. Like just to recently, I wasn't planning. Like I bought a 10-gallon at like Petco at their $1 gallon. I was like, okay, I'm gonna have my because I had the new 10-gallon, and then I had my old one that I did after the one broke. And I was like, okay, I'll have guppies in here. I was like, oh, I'm going to get some pea puffers in this other one. So I had like my 2 10-gallons and my 30. And then before I even set the new 10 up, someone was like, oh, my neighbor's getting rid of this. It's free. It's just on the curb. I picked it up. It was a 20 tall, but it had like an AquaClear 50, sponge filters, decor, all that. So I'm like, this is a really good setup for free.
Right.
So now I have a 20 tall set up on it's all in my base. I have a 20 tall, the 10-gallon, then my 30. I'm like, this is just getting out of hand. It's just been this like domino effect. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. But like I spent, but like I haven't spent a lot of money for it. It's just like all just stuff I'm accruing. But I have like all this stuff that I have extra. Like I ended up convincing Liz to drive to Chicago to get this guy was just getting rid of a bunch of odds and ends.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I saw like 3 things I would want that would make it worth actually going out there. Some like nice sponge filters. So I just drove over there and I had like a bunch of odds and ends. So I was able to make like a spray bar and all this bunch of random stuff with it. And now I finally have it all plumbed with air, but it's just I think I'm having too much fun actually setting it up, and I haven't really been enjoying it yet.
Mm-hmm.
But I've gotten like plants and stuff and I have it all planted. I have like 2 tanks I kind of like how they set up, and then one, the 10 that I'm going to put the pea puffers in once things settle down and it's all ready to go. But I was like, I had this like orange gravel that Liz had from the beta tank, and I was like, I just need it to give me some more depth for plants.
Mm-hmm.
So I put it down and put the other gravel on top, and then I started planting them, and then all this orange gravel just started coming up, and I was like, I always have like, like regular gray or like regular gravel color, and then just like orange smatterings. I can't bury them back down. So, so I'm like, I just want to like take it all, but I already have it all planted. So I'm just like, I'm just gonna leave it. Maybe get some black gravel and throw it over the top, and just hope for the best.
Yeah, that's part of the problem with my setup, because so I brought that rhizomat up because I went to so I have on that side of the tank now. I have 3 cryptspiralis. I've got some another crypt that I can't remember the name. I've got some water sprite. I've got a bunch of stuff. I've got some when I bought it, it was labeled as dwarf sage, but it's not. So I've got quite a bit of plants planted on the side of the tank that I use that rhizomat. And when I got my shipment of plants in, I tried to pull those plants up, and I couldn't get them out.
They rooted too deep into the mat, and they're like, they're just here now.
They are 100% a part of that mat now. So I was really considering just ripping them out and then replanting them, but like it's easy to see. So I've got some Mapani, some African driftwood in the center of the tank. And I've got Java fern planted into 2 little crevices for that are in that driftwood, and then to the right of that is everything that's planted into that rhizomat. And I didn't want to completely nuke that side of the tank and then replant it and then not retake and then waste, waste like $40 in plants. But I mean, looking at my tank. So the majority of the plants that I ordered here recently were all crypts. So my tank is entirely crypt melt right now.
Yeah.
Which because you've got some crypts too. It looks awful.
Yeah.
And then I've got 2 stems of water sprite. So total, I've got 4 stems of water sprite in this tank. 2 of them are double the size of the other 2.
And were they the same size when you planted them?
Yep, they were all the same they were all the same size. They all came out of the same bundle. I planted 2 on the left and 2 on the right, and the 2 that are planted into that rhizomat are twice as tall as the other ones on the other side. I've got some Ludwigia that I've tried to plant multiple places around the tank. It's struggling. I bought a rubber nose pleco here recently, about 3.5 inches, so it's pretty good size. Every time I plant, I have one stem of Ludwigia that I keep trying to plant different places in the tank, and every time I plant it, he uproots it. So I had a piece of water, or I had one stem of water sprite that was that way too. So I just left it floating, because it's a plant that you can float to.
Right.
So I don't know. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah. Plants are. I wasn't even planning on getting into the plants. It was at the same time I was just taking advantage of a deal. There was the Petco that was like right by my work was going out of business, so like they had sold off all their fish. They were just demoing and selling tanks, and there was just one tank that was like left that just had some mossballs, like one floating plant, and just a bunch of driftwood. And I was like, because like the driftwood they were selling, and there was like $12 normally, and he's like, it was like full of just driftwood. And so he's like, I'll give you just everything in this thing, the moss, all that, like it's like $20. And I was like, all right, fine. So I had that. It was just like an Anubias plant. So I planted it, got one of them from like another pet store, and put it on driftwood, and then kept it in my little 5-gallon tank that I had. And then they took off under just like an LED light I had. Mm-hmm. And then like, okay, so then as I started watching those videos, I was like, okay, so I got I had the hornwort that I got, which is a floating plant that just took off in the water and just started crowding everything out. But when I tried the stem plants in my little 20 tall, that's my guppy tank, I don't have anything planted in the center. There's I showed you the picture that has the wood little bridge and like kind of like that black gravel river. I have the plants are in 4 corners of it, and I'm already I don't know how I'm gonna feel about it because I have Val in one corner that's already put 2 baby shoots off that are rooting, so that thing's just gonna start just taking over one side. But I have Val in one corner. Someone just driving a motorcycle. In the other corner, I have Jungle Val. Then I have Pogostem and Sloss Octopus in the other corner, and then Val, the one that's whatever the one that twists. I can't remember what it's called. It's a type of Val, but it spirals.
Is it Crenum?
Maybe. I can't remember, but so it'll be interesting. But it's just all tall plants. I'm just taking advantage of that height I have. Mm-hmm. Just plant some taller, easy to grow plants, and hopefully they kind of like that look. If they're all going to just take over the center where the light is, then I just have kind of like this different like shadows and stuff going on. So I think that'll be kind of cool.
Right, and that's why I went with. So originally I had some water sprite in this tank too, and unfortunately the fish store that I bought it from sold it to me when it was already pretty much half dead.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that I could get it home, obviously hit it with a bunch of fertilizer and give it a bunch of root tabs. So I've put like 60 root tabs in this tank. So every plant has at least one root tab basically directly underneath it, if not 2 or 3 around it.
Right.
Because as much as I like the look of sand, there is definitely a disadvantage trying to grow plants in sand. It compacts, roots don't move well through it. It's not heavy enough so plants float out of it.
Right.
But I thought, as tall as this tank is, I could plant all this stuff, and I love the look of Vallisneria, but I didn't want the same thing that everybody else has, so that's why I bought the Cryptspiralis. And Corey hypes pretty much anything that's crypt. Corey hypes it up, so I took his word of advice. And really, the only thing that I need to upgrade on my tank is I definitely need to upgrade the lighting. Go ahead.
Is it the stock light that's on it?
Yeah, so it's got a glass top, which is part of the reason that I bought this tank, is I didn't have to go have a glass top made, or I didn't have to buy an aftermarket one. This one is made to fit this tank, and it's got these really nice they're clear plastic strips that have a channel cut into them, and then they actually snap onto the back of the glass top. So right now I just have like all my air hoses and anything that goes in, like my heater cord. That plastic just rests on top of it, so it doesn't compress it, but it's enough that it's still holding in heat. It lets light in and out of it, and like my snails can't escape.
Right.
But if I wanted to, I could cut that plastic and then, create channels throughout it. I had it in my head here recently before I got this bigger sponge filter that I was going to add a hang-on back to the tank just to get some more water circulation other than what's coming from inside the tank. And I bought a Marineland Penguin 200 for like $15 from PetSmart, and I got it home. I hot rodded it. I put an intake sponge on it and filled it up with enough sponge that I couldn't fit anything else inside of it, and put the bio wheel on it, put it in the tank. It was way bigger than I thought it was going to be. And I started it, and it was one of the loudest contraptions that I've ever had inside this room. So I broke it down and took it back and just got another giant sponge filter. So
there you go.
But I definitely want to. So I've got the LEDs that came with this tank. They actually snap into the rim of the tank. So my glass top is completely flush with the top of the tank. I don't have anything on top of it.
That's nice.
And then I had like a 2.5 foot light bar that I used to light my 36-gallon tank. So I've got that setting on top of the glass top right now. I really want to get like, one of the Fluval like 48-inch lights, or like the Finex 24/7 Planted Plus.
Yeah.
I think that light, I don't really want to spend $150 on a light right now, but
oh yeah, that's my boat too.
That light having the functionality of not having to buy an additional timer. You basically sync it to your time zone, and then throughout every day, it just cycles with wherever the sun's at.
Right.
So,
isn't that the one that has like the Bluetooth or functionality too?
I think their newest model might. I'm not quite sure.
Oh, okay.
But it has functions that are basically just for you. Stuff like you can make it thunderstorm and
okay.
Yeah, I mean every review or every article that I've read that's been written about that light, it's like, well, this thunderstorm setting looks really cool, to look at the tank, but every fish in the tank just about has an aneurysm, when it does its lightning flash. So, I mean, if you want to stress your fish out and potentially kill your investment that you have inside this glass box, then go ahead and use that function as much as you can.
Like every night, just thunderstorm.
Yeah. So, but yeah, other than that Pleco, really the only other addition that I have to the tank is I bought a gold ram.
Oh.
I tried, so you and I had talked about it. When I set this tank up, it was fully cycled, all the fish were healthy. I bought a rainbow shark because my previous shark died of old age.
That red-tailed one you had?
Yep, the
36?
The red-tailed shark, it was like 7 years old at that point, which is, well past its lifespan. So I thought I'll get a small rainbow shark. I'll do it a little bit different. That'll be the centerpiece fish in this tank. It'll kind of boss everything else around. But if I ever get something like an angelfish, it won't be nipping fins and stuff like that. And I went through 2 of them. I bought them from the same store, from the same tank. They both had I'm pretty sure they both had swim bladder disease. I don't overfeed. The water parameters in my tank are all right where they're supposed to be, and on top of that, I have enough plants in there to definitely help with any issues that I have, and both of them, only lasted a couple days. So luckily, the fish store that I have here in Lafayette made it right and worked with me real well. So I got one of these. I got a gold ram. I didn't want to mess with how fragile the German blue rams are, and I didn't want to run a tank at like 86 degrees. I didn't want to make all the other fish uncomfortable just so I could have one really pretty fish thrive. So I'm running the tank a little bit hot. I mean, 79, 80 is kind of where my tank sits at. So the ram that I bought is happy and healthy. But a couple days ago, I decided that some of the Tetris and stuff that I had were looking a little thin. So I decided to use the quarantine trio minus the ick part that Corey sells. So my tank's going through a antibiotic treatment and a course of dewormer right now, and everything's doing fantastic.
That's good. Yeah, I've done that a few times. That just after I had a couple just random deaths, I was like, I should probably, because quarantine was still kind of a new thing. Mm-hmm. Just put them in there after we get new fish. Just throw them in.
Yeah, if I had a nice place to put like a 10 or like a one of the oddball sizes in between 10 and 20 gallons, I would definitely set up a quarantine tank. As everything that I have read about quarantining your fish that you bring into your home from the store or from a wholesaler or whatever, there's nothing about it that doesn't make sense. I mean, and people don't think about it, but if you buy a fish from a pet store a week before, from a run-of-the-mill pet store, a week before that fish was in a tank with, possibly 1,000 other fish, which had 1,000 other fish in it before that, and so on. And so,
right.
Especially when wild-caught fish are being brought in to keep bloodlines fresh and stuff like that, you never know what's getting brought into the tank. So if I could, I definitely would quarantine, and like I said, when I get my mini fish room set up, for sure, I'll definitely have, like a 40 breeder or something. If I found one of those on sale, for sure, that would definitely be a quarantine tank.
Yeah, I definitely am. Like, I have that. I still have that 5.5 gallon. That's like, it's just dry now. That's just kind of ready for the next batch. But since I have the 10 gallon just waiting, it's just going to be the quarantine. Mm-hmm. Might as well just put them in there, quarantine it.
Right.
So I had no issues. Like, the worst thing it did to my tank was that it tinted my airline hosing.
Really?
Like blue, the ICX stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's just because it was like everything went blue for a second, then it went away. But yeah, it just stuck to the hose and just made it like tinted. Could be worse. It didn't like affect it any other way.
Right. Yeah. Knock on wood. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sure if you used it like that medicine or other like the methylene blue regularly, it could probably turn your silicone blue. But I wasn't too worried about it.
Yeah, like all the silicone in this tank that I have right now is black, so I don't think that I'll have to worry about that. But knock on wood, this is one of the only times that I've been involved in this hobby that I haven't had to fight ick. So I'm really fortunate on that front. But within 24 hours of doing that first dose of General Cure, the majority of the fish that I had in this tank were all full of worms. So I'm if I wasn't a believer before, I definitely am now.
If you saw them being passed, and you're like, oh, that's.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've got that smaller sponge filter in the right. It's almost right in the center of the tank, kind of tucked behind the driftwood. So I saw the ram pass some worms, and then I went and ate lunch, or I ate dinner Friday, and then I came back like an hour later into my living room, and I looked on top of that sponge filter, and it was covered in worms. So I mean, my snails took care of that, so I didn't have to clean that mess up. But really, I think, honestly, the only fish that I have in here that wasn't completely packed full of worms was the 3 cories that I have.
Right.
So...
You probably and did you move? What fish did you move from the 36?
So I moved. So I moved the red-tailed black shark. I moved kind of a hodgepodge of tetras and tiger barbs. And when I set this tank up, I was really unhappy with the tiger barbs because anything that I put in the tank, they just beat to death. And other than that shark, obviously, because it was way bigger than them, but
right.
Everything that I had read and watched and people that I had asked said the more tiger barbs that you put in a school, the less aggressive they get. And no matter how many, I mean, at one point I had 15. With 15 tiger barbs, they were still extremely aggressive. And I love the fish. I mean, they're a really pretty fish, and they've got some personality, but, you know, I put, not neons, I put some cardinal tetras in there, and then they ran the cardinal tetras to death. So what incentive do I have to try and keep fish that I like better than the fish that I got for free? You know what I mean?
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think, my big tank is just kind of just a hodgepodge of just random schooling fish, and then like that one platy that was just the first fish I got that was just, it became my centerpiece just because it's a big fat platy that just does its thing and then it gets out in the morning, eats, and goes hides in its cave it made itself. I'm like, all right, whatever you want to do.
Are you gonna add any more?
Add any more platies to it? I do have other platies that are I have some, those ones that are like they're orange and they have like the black on their fins. I forget if they're like
the Mickey Mouse platies?
No, what are they? I think the red wag, I think that's what
yes.
they're called.
Yep.
And I actually had I totally forgot about this. I actually have a tank at work, at my desk at work, just because I'm that person. It was like a 3.5 gallon that I got, just because I got some fry. It just happened to it because the pet store that I have was just, do you want fry? I was like, sure. So just tiny fish, I threw them in my, had them in that 2-gallon tank I had, and then when they got bigger, I took them to this 3.5 gallon I have at work, and it's something fun to look at. They're very, just because they know when I come over, because I'm not there at night, they don't see as much foot traffic, so even when I get there, I turn the light on, they're just ready for food, just a lot personable. And actually, I like that tank just because it's the tank you see all day, and you're just there, captive audience in front of it. But it's got like it's got a molly and 2 platies in there, and I like those. But they're getting too big for that tank, so I'm actually going to bring them back. So that'll be interesting, because I originally had 2 Dalmatian mollies in there, but the one started being kind of aggressive around feeding time, so I took him out and put him in the big tank. So now I'm going to bring them all back, but now there's so much stuff going on in there, I don't think they're going to mind. But I think I'm about just done adding new fish. I think I've hit my capacity.
Yeah.
Is that how you have for yours, or do you think you're going to add more?
Well, I know for a fact that with the amount of filtration I have and the amount of plants, I know that right now I've got 10 head and tail light tetras that I kind of use. I bought that fish specifically because I like the way that they look, but I knew that they were hardy enough to throw them in at the end of my cycle, to kind of wrap everything up with an actual fish load, because I'm not a big fan of doing like entire fish in cycles.
Right.
I like to get it started chemically, let it go for a little bit, and then let the fish and the plants do it the rest of the way. So I've got 10 of those, and I like those pretty well. I'm happy with that school. I would like to add another like small school of like Harlequin rasboras, or another tetra of a different color, maybe some cardinals or some neons. I really like the black neon tetras, and they get pretty pretty good size for little tetras too. So I don't know. I'm happy with the top side of my tank right now. I've got 3 Palladius cories, the peppered cory catfish. I really like those. They're constantly, earlier I was just kind of sitting here watching the tank while I finished get set up, and all 3 of them were side by side, pretty much halfway, or half of their body was buried into the sand. And, I don't ever have any issues with them, so big fan of those. I added the pleco because I really like them, and I'm not, even though I've got plants, I'm not an anti-algae guy. So I feed the pleco, but I also want the pleco and snails to kind of maintain the algae, not necessarily take care of it all. I've got so on the back side of my tank right now, and on the side of that that Zis filter, I've got a little bit of brown spot algae that I don't really mind. I've thought about adding a
autosynchronous.
No, I've thought about blacking out the back of the tank with trash bag or construction a background. That's what I was trying to say. Because when I set this tank up with the driftwood and everything that I was going to do, it was originally going to be a brown water setup where it was nothing but tannins all the time, and that's kind of petered off right now. And I kind of like the halfway in between look that I have right now, but I also am not a big fan of the shadows that the wall being right behind the tank are throwing into inside the tank, because the color of the wall that's behind the tank would have been the same color as a tank full of tannins. I mean, it's kind of an off brown color, so it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But especially if I put a much stronger light on top of the tank, that's going to amplify that even more. So I think I'm going to put a black background on that tank, and then I want to add some more cories. I don't know if I'm going to go like 9 of them or anything, but I might add 2 or 3 more. So that's a little
peppered.
My local fish store pretty much always has a deal on those where they're like $4 for 1 or 3 for 9.
Oh, that's not bad at all.
No, and they're all good size and they're always healthy. So I'm not really worried about adding any more of those adding any more of those to the tank if I want to. The only other like fish of note that I kind of want to add is I kind of want to add some apistos. Because the ram that I have is really cool. I love watching him or her school around. It's a lot. So when I bought this fish, I immediately picked out the one in the tank that I didn't want, and then when he netted the fish, it ended up being the one that I didn't want, and I wasn't going to make him put it back in the tank and then cherry pick me the fish that I wanted. So I'm incredibly happy with that fish now. So I'm glad I got the one that I did, but I would like another small cichlid like that. So then there's interaction between the two.
Right, gives them something to play off that's their same species.
I don't really want to do any more rams because their lifespan's only like 2 years, and I don't look forward to losing fish, and a fish that's fragile like this already anyway, and with a short lifespan, having the one is enough for me. But trying to find an apisto where I live is tough. My local fish store doesn't carry them. I haven't asked if they can order me any, but I also don't want to be that guy that's like, hey, can you order me one of these fish? You know?
It's not like I need 20 of them, but it's like I just need one.
Right.
I don't want to pay more than $10. Like, what? Like
And I don't want to inconvenience. I know the people that own the store, and they have good staff, and they've treated me really well. Especially when I was a new fish keeper, and they've saved me as much money as I've spent in the store. So I don't want to go out of my way to inconvenience them. So while we were in Indianapolis today, I told my wife, I was like, I looked up the number one aquarium store in Indiana, or in Indianapolis, and I found what everyone said was the number one store. So we went there. It was the Reef store, right at 56th and Keystone. So kind of in between Indy and Fishers. Okay. And super impressed with their saltwater setup, not so impressed with their freshwater setup. And, you know, like any store employee, somebody walked up to me and asked me if I needed any help with anything, and I said, do you have any epistogrammas? And they said, well, I don't think so, but we'll I'll look. And they had 3, and they were all females, and they weren't doing so hot. And I was like, as much as I want this fish, I don't want to buy something that I don't want.
Right.
So I don't know necessarily what I'm going to do about that yet. But every time I watch something from Aquarium Co-op, you know, he's a big Episto guy, so he's got the major species or the most popular variations of that fish, and they always look fantastic in his tanks. And I'm like, man, I really want one.
It's like, I want it the right way. You don't want to just get it like, I got it. Yep. I don't like what it looks like, but I have it. It's mine now. It's here.
I don't want to have it just to say that I have it. So, other than that, really, I'm a big fan of snails. So I'll probably add a couple Nerite snails. I have mystery snails in the tank right now, and they're not messing with my plants, and they're not laying eggs, so I don't have to worry about that. But my wife kind of wants me to add shrimp. So I don't know. I've got too many wants and not enough time or money. So
right.
We'll see what happens.
Throw everything you want into the tank and just be like, and apparently those 5 things don't work well together.
Right. Yeah, I've done that in the past.
Because wasn't it your one of your Mr. Snails that was chomping on your shark?
Yeah.
After it died? Yeah.
I came home and I have a big black on black mystery snail that's probably, I mean, it's bigger than a 50-cent piece. He's a chunky boy, and he had the majority of that rainbow shark inside of him when I got home. So
you're like, oh, that's. And you knew it wasn't just an attack. It wasn't just like it just jumped at him. But like,
no,
nope.
But you know,
that'd be intense to watch. Just like, what the crap is happening?
My wife is not the biggest fan of my fish keeping hobby. At least she wasn't in the beginning. And since I've got this tank set up, you know, most of the way how I want it, you know, her and I have spent a lot of time in here just watching it. And what she's enjoyed more than anything is watching what the snails do. You know, how fast these snails move around the tank and how fast they can change elevation. You know, they'll be out of the water doing whatever, and then all of a sudden just detach from the side of the tank, float to the bottom, and just never stop moving. So I'm a big fan of invertebrates. I don't really want to try and do like crayfish or anything big like that, and then have to worry about those chomping on my fish. But I'll definitely add some more snails and maybe some shrimp.
Yeah, I have a similar situation to what you had in Indiana at the closest like fish store by me, which is like it's super close, but like it's a specialty like saltwater, so like a ton of saltwater stuff, and there's like one small wall of just freshwater fish that's mostly cichlids, and I'm like, it's great. I'm not keeping cichlids right now, and I'm not a salt, but it's like neither store is all about saltwater, and it's like, well, we got just a few of these fish, and it's like they never have exactly what I'm looking for, so I was like, I'll go and I'll browse. I'm like, and all right, see you guys later.
Yeah, I don't like to be you know, the tire kicker guy. I'll always buy like a little bit of food or something. You know what? Since I am a moderate to experienced fish keeper, the thing that I've struggled more with anything is like bloat in fish. So I'll feed like super high protein food, and then the fish can't process it. And then it's like, well, I struggle finding food that is varied enough and low enough protein that I can, because here recently, especially, the Aquarium Co-op's been hyping up the Hikari Vibra Bites. So I bought a big bag of them, and I like them. All my fish eat them, but they're super, super high protein. So you feed that twice in a row, and all your fish are constipated, so...
Right. I got a small bag when I saw it. It gets you. Those videos like, oh, that's a good point. And then it's...
Well, I really...
end up getting, like, plants and...
I really want to get some of those ONIP tabs. But the only...
I have some of those. I actually got them at... Oh, go ahead.
Where'd you get them at?
At my local fish store had them,
okay.
Surprisingly enough.
Yeah, my local store doesn't carry them, and I saw some today at the store that I went to, and I wish I would have bought them, but they were pretty expensive, and I have... So what I was saying about being the tire kicker, if I walk into a fish store, and I browse, and I'm, when I go into the fish store, I'm there for like 45 minutes to an hour because I study each tank and I look at all the setups, and I always browse all their equipment. So I'll always buy like some food or something little.
Right.
And I didn't.
You're always gonna leave with something. You're not just gonna be like spend an hour there and like, all right, this was fun. Goodbye.
Right. Yeah. I mean, because you're taking up employees' time, and even if you don't. Right. If you don't cause any mayhem at all, you're still costing the company money in some fashion. So. I really wish I would have bought some, but I didn't want to pay like double the markup for them. So when I'm ready, I'll just order some from the co-op.
Yeah, I do like. I still have. I've used it a couple times. I don't get the same reaction that whenever they show the videos of them at the store doing it, but I'll get them to go after it. But I don't get like that whole big mess of fish. But I don't think my fish don't really behave like that. Mm-hmm. We get a couple that are just like, you get them just like underneath and just as it's dissolving because it just sticks to the side as it's evolving, they'll just go after it. But they're just, but usually like the big fish will come over and just take a bite, and sometimes they'll just dislodge it and they'll just float to the bottom, and they all just attack the bottom. I'm like, well, that I just put a pellet then, but okay, right, you're fine. But I've had I had two fish. I had one beta and then a swordtail that both had the bloat. So since then, I've just been like every day I give them just a little something different. So it's always like either like I have like a bunch of those Hikari like little kind of like almost like in like a plastic can with like I have like the shrimp, the bloodworms, the tube effects worms and stuff, and I'll just alternate that or flake or like a pellet, and I'm just like trying to mix it so that every day they're getting a little something different. So it's not. I really don't want to have the bloat again because it's like you can't do anything for them. You're like, just like I threw peas, like I blanched peas and deshelled them and tried to throw them in there, and it's just like sometimes it works and it's just like other times it's just like just a death sentence. Right.
Yeah. The ram that I have got pretty bloated a couple days ago, and I was aggravated because I put some Vibra Bites in the tank and a decent amount made it to the bottom, and normally my Corys just swim right up and take care of that. And there was a little patch of the tank where they hadn't made it to yet, and he just swam right over and just inhaled all of it. And I was like, well, that fish is going to die. Because I've tried the pee trick, and I can't get it to work, and I don't want to mess around with the Epsom salts. I don't want to put Epsom salts in my tank. And I don't really have a good setup to give a fish an Epsom salt bath. So that's part of the reason I decided to worm the tank, because fish shouldn't get bloated that fast, especially when they consume that small of amount of food. So I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Hikari foods. Pretty much all of the food that I have underneath my cabinet right now is all Hikari. I've got
I like their stuff.
I've got the shrimp and algae wafers for my pleco and the Corys, and then I've got some micro pellets, micro wafers, and then the Vibra Bites. Those are all what I have right now. Oh, and I've got some of the bloodworms too.
Yeah, I like those micro wafers because actually they float a little bit, so I get a lot of those. My tetras go up and get them. Mm-hmm. Because I got those. Since I have my school of my neons, which I've had them since the beginning. At least most. I had some die-offs early, but
they're a really fragile.
I just keep
fish.
adding to the school now. I think I have 14 now of them. Then I have a small school of silvertip, which I like just because they're just look nothing like the neons. They're just like they're gold. They have the silver tip on their tail and other fins, and it's a neat contrast.
That's part of the problem that I've had with my local fish store here, because the silvertip tetra is one that I really, really like. You know, that yellow color with those wider silver tips. There's not many fish that size that school together that look that way. And what my fish store calls silvertip tetras are just the red and white rosy fin. You know, they're the tetra that are red at the top. They're like white at the bottom, or they're white at the silver at the top, red at the bottom, and then they've got the white tips on the bottom of their fins. They call those the silvertip tetras, and that's not what they are. And I brought that up to one of the guys that works there, and he's like, "No, that's what they are." And I was like, "Okay, you know." I should work here.
I'm not getting anywhere here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
But, yeah, and I remember we actually had the discussion because about our water chain setups. I know that was one thing that
I hated.
I said those two 5-gallon Home Depot buckets and like just a regular gravel vac siphon. And especially with that 30-gallon, it was becoming tedious because you have to change like a third of the water. You're like, I'm going to fill 2 of these buckets, and I'm in the basement, so I have to either dump it into my sump pit or take it up and dump it in the sink. And I'm just like, I don't want to deal with that anymore. But we both kind of came up with the same kind of idea. But what did you end up doing for yours?
So I bought the brand is Tiger Pump, but I bought a 120 gallon per hour submersible water pump, and then I just got like 5/16 rubber plastic tubing, and I just hose clamp that to the end of the tank, and I just drop it in the tank and pump out as much water as I want. It works just as fast, if not faster, than the gravel vac that I have. The only issue that I've recently figured out, because I've only had it for 2 weeks, if I try and pump from a bucket on the floor up into my tank is so tall, there's not enough head pressure, or there's too much head pressure pushing down on that pump, so it will not pump that height. So I have...
so you have to put the bucket...
I have to elevate the bucket so it's almost even with the tank before it'll pump into the tank. So I don't know if I'm going to build like a cart setup where it elevates the bucket quite a bit, because I want to do that anyway.
Right.
Because when I was filling this tank on setup and the first couple water changes that I did, you know, I'm carrying... So I would start filling a 5-gallon bucket, fill it, switch or start filling another 5-gallon bucket, come in here and dump it, go back, grab the other one, switch. You know, I've got a 60-gallon tank, so that was a lot of trips back and forth from the garage. And,
right.
And especially now that I've got it set up, I don't have a Python, and even if I did, I wouldn't have one that's 80 feet long. So I have to take water out of my sink in my kitchen to get it the right temperature, because I don't want to dump a bunch of cold water in the tank. So I don't know. I need to play around with my setup a little bit more, but I've been really happy with that pump as far as I'm not getting water all over my carpet. You know, I don't have to try and lift a bucket 7 feet in the air to dump into the top of this tank, and I don't have to worry about it messing up any of my scape or my plants. So you built the cart setup, right?
I did. I've got a pond pump that was like, I think it was like 140 gallons, but it was but since the way it's designed, it sucks everything from the bottom and then shoots it out the top. I'm able to get that height up I need to get it over there. So, and then I got a dolly cart and then like a 27-gallon big plastic tote, like one of those black yellow lid totes, so it can hold that water weight. And then I made the mistake because I only have one water access point in my basement, and it's just ice cold water. And I was like, oh, it's fine. The water, it'll equalize the heat, it'll catch up. A fish like swam in as the cold water hit it, and just like it didn't die, but it like went like catatonic, and I was like, oh god, this is not good. The whole temperature dropped in like the tank from like 76 to like 60, and I was like, yeah, I need to not do this. So now I just get I just fill up warm water and dump it into the bucket just for the changes. I need to figure out another way. I think I might just let it fill the bucket. I haven't done this yet, but I think I'm going to fill the tote, let it just get up to room temperature, and then use it, and then just deal with it being cool.
Right.
But not as cold as it, like, straight from the tap.
When I've heard, from what I've read, if you like, say you fill a bucket of water up and then leave it out overnight, you don't have to dechlorinate it because all of the chlorine's evaporated from the water at that point. So I've used a lot of I've used a lot of different dechlorinators, and I always just dechlorinate the tank. I've had a lot of success with that, so I don't need to change. I don't think that I should change any more than I already do, as much as I tinker around with stuff. But I recently switched to Prime, and I'm so happy with that stuff that I don't even feel mildly bad about dechlorinating the tank anymore because it's not harsh on the fish,
Right. Because I was an API guy when I first got into it, just because that's what the closest pet store I had, like just the regular like Pet Supplies Plus or PetSmart had, just because they carry Prime, but it wasn't a thing I knew about, so I just got the API like ammonia lock, and I got the water conditioner and all this, and the quick start, and then now I'm just like, I have Prime and I have stability, and I'm like, this is what I need. But I have the test kit, so I should test the water after, like, I have it sit overnight just to see if it does get all the chlorine out before I throw it in the tank. But that would be nice, just to be able to just get it and just put it in there and not worry about it. But,
right.
Yeah, how often do you end up changing your water, typically, now that you have all your plants in there?
So I was going to change some today, but I decided not to, just because I kind of want to. I'm kind of doing an experiment right now. I want to see how much nitrates, or how many nitrates build up in a week versus 2 weeks. So so today would have been 1 week, and I tested last night, and I had in between 5 and 10. So that for me, anyway, I think that's a pretty comfortable range, especially with as many plants as I have, and I don't have super fragile fish in there. So, and I'm using Prime on top of that, so I think that's pretty safe. But I'm gonna test tomorrow and Tuesday and see where it's at. But I don't normally do big water changes. I figured up, if I take 10 gallons of water out of this tank, it's 16%. So
that's reasonable.
I think if I do, as long as I've had this tank set up, that's what I've done. I've just taken 10 gallons out, 10 gallons back in, and I haven't had any issues. The parameters have all stayed where they need to be. But I did find a product that I like a lot better than Safe Start. It's a bacteria starter. It's pretty much identical, but it's a little bit cheaper, and I think it's actually less filler and more of what you need. It's called Safe Start Complete. The only place that I found it is my local fish store, but I'll send you a picture of it just in case you ever want to try it. Because with
definitely
with Prime and everything else that I dose, anytime I do a water change, or anytime I add fertilizer, so I've got the Easy Green from the Aquarium Co-op. I dose that twice a week. I do, instead of doing all 6 squirts in one day, I do 3 at the beginning of the week and 3 at the end of the week. That's worked pretty well for me so far. Every time I dose that, I do 1 cap of the bacteria starter just to help. So there's not, with all the medications and everything that I dosed yesterday. So I did the second round of the dewormer yesterday, and day 2 of the Maricin. So the antibiotic, I went ahead and did a cap full of that Safe Start Complete, and I had one of the biggest bacteria blooms that I've ever seen since I've had fish tanks. So I'm pretty confident that the stuff works.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I have to check that out once you send me a link for it. But yeah, I think I'm good on chemicals and stuff now, because I think because I've how I have it all sitting. I have my 30 gallon has a stand, and then my 20 tall is on an old dresser that I had in my apartment, and then my 10 gallon is on an old bathroom vanity from the bathroom we ripped out, with just like a plywood top I put on it, and that whole like under area is just full of like various chemicals and things. It's like I feel like I just have enough stuff to just start a small fish store. It seems like,
right?
I know it's not that crazy, but it's just like I have way too many things right now.
Well, and I don't know how you are, but a lot of times if I see a product that I'm going to use and I know I'm going to use it and it's on sale, I'll just go ahead and buy it.
Right.
So the Prime that I'm using right now is one of their small containers, and I got a big bottle of Prime for what I paid for that small container. I won't even go through that small bottle of Prime I have this year. At least I don't plan on it, because I only use it when I water change. But when you can, at least for me, if I can buy it and it makes sense, I just go ahead and buy it. So the underneath of my fish tank is definitely full of more chemicals and stuff than I need for sure.
But it's like you're not gonna need to like still in like 6 months you'll be like I'm good. I don't need to go get anything new.
That's right.
It's supposed to like if I just got as much I needed like for like a monthly basis, I have to keep running out there. You're gonna end up spending more money in the long term. Mm-hmm. Because like I have a little. Just I don't have my primates. I have this little tiny bottle of Stress Coat. It's like a little like, it's literally like the size of like a shot glass.
Okay.
But I put like 7 drops when I change the water, and then that sets it up good, and then I don't have to worry about it. And that way I don't have to like measure out Prime and do all that. But like I need a half of a milliliter. Just all right, there we go. Now I just like put a few drops, just done with it.
Well, and one of the reasons why I like Prime so much is I don't have to worry about overdosing it. So, if I dump a little bit too much in the tank, it's not going to be detrimental as long as you're not doing it every day,
Right. That's why I am with the stability. I kind of I don't measure that out as much, because when I was putting that AquaClear 50 on that I got for free, I had the 30 and the 20. So I took their media and I kind of like just put them all together, just mix it all out, because I had one with nothing on it, and I didn't want to like crash my big tank. So I was just like put like half it in here, half it in there, and then I just threw some stability in just to kind of make sure they all seated each other. Let that run for a couple weeks, and then I'll put everything proper back to where it goes.
Right.
Because I have like in my AquaClear 50, there's the size 50 sponge, then like my 30 sponge, then like the 20 bio, and then the 30. And then I'm just like, and then this is all over here. And it works, but didn't want to like break anything. Just have a better or like a bigger filter on it.
Right.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure like half people who are listening to this are like, what is even going on? Like if they have no interest in fish at all, they're just like, there's no explanations. They're just talking about what's going on. But people who are like us are gonna be like, yeah, I like this conversation. This is good.
Right.
I'm wondering some stuff. But yeah, I have like a bunch of those. Like I'll find at work. I have that Aquarium Co-op app. I'm like listening to like old episodes from like when he did like his little real fish talk. And I'm just like learning just a couple things. Like I'm just like listening back through it. I'm like, oh, that's a good point, or I should do this differently. But it's good background too.
I listen to his podcast a lot while I'm at work. I listen to it from Stitcher just because I like their app so much.
Right.
But there's multiple episodes that I've listened to more than once.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm in that same boat. And sometimes I'll search for like a specific topic of something. I'm like, I want to know like just if I'm looking for something specific, I'm like to what I'm either doing. Because even if it's not fully about that topic, it usually gives me enough. And there's like a couple other, just like you said, like don't just put my whole boat in his basket. Like there's other ones that he's either introduced me to, or I've just found through my search that I just like listen to their stuff. Like the K2 Tropicals, I like his kind of stuff that he talks about. But yeah, it's nice just to kind of find out that like, oh, I'm not alone in this. There's people have been at this point. Then as I'm growing, I'm noticing that like group support thing has been really nice because you don't just want to be like asking like call and ask like your local fish store because sometimes they know, but sometimes they're like I have no idea what's going on.
Right.
You know, send me pictures or have to explain it differently, but I can just show a picture and be like, what's going on here? What is?
Well, and I have nothing but praise for that aquarium group support because of all the Facebook groups or all the social media groups that I've been a part of, regardless of what the topic is or the intention, this is one of the only ones that I think is working the way that it intended, and it's actually enjoyable to be a part of it. You know, I'll get notifications throughout the day when things are posted or questions are asked in there, and I always take the time to look at it and see. And I don't participate a whole lot because I don't consider myself an expert or a veteran.
Right.
You know, I'm as new as the next guy or gal.
Right.
But I've really enjoyed being a part of that group, and not just for the information that you have to gain from there, but I mean some of the fish setups and the tanks, and I mean I've seen a lot of cool stuff that I wouldn't have got to see otherwise, you know.
Right. I definitely agree. Like I think I like that more than just like listening to like the YouTube videos or the podcast stuff. Just being in that group, I think, because I'll see things that like people that aren't doing this either professionally or just are like that deep into it, like people at my level or around my level, or they're just like in the same boat as me, and I'm like, I just went through that last week. This is what I did and it worked, and then just like helping each other out. But yeah, I've seen like whenever someone posts like, oh, this is what I'm doing with my tank for this, I'm like, well, that's a really good idea. I never thought to like tie this over here to have it work better.
Mm-hmm. Well, that group is where I got the idea to use the pond or submersible pump idea from.
Yeah, that was my thing. I think we might have saw the same thing and just went in different directions with it. But I was just like, mainly because I had that. I was originally to do your idea. I had a pump that got like from that guy who I got some fish tank stuff from, and I wasn't just gonna blow water on it. I didn't really need that extra circulation. So I was like, oh, I can just put two hoses on it and just have it pump that way. But ended up figuring out when I got those spray bar pieces that I could just put it all together. I'm like, oh yeah, this is actually so much better for my plants to actually get some, so they don't all bunch up. They kind of just they get some water moved so that every piece is getting some different light. Mm-hmm. And then I was able just to use all these little extra things that I couldn't think I could use before. So, but just seeing them like asking the question like, can I do something else here? And like, yeah, do it this way. I'm like, that is a good idea. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't have. If I was just by myself, I would have just been doing a bunch of stuff differently.
Yeah, like I said, again, I can't stress enough how awesome being a part of that community has been, because it's one of the few times on social media that I haven't seen people at their throats, and I've seen some people make, at least in the short time that I've been a part of that group, make the rookiest of rookie mistakes and, you know, totally kill off their entire fish load. And everyone in that group that participates has been supportive. Like, I've spent a lot of times on fish forums.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever I have a question, and it's always, what are your water parameters? Why are you such an idiot? And it's like, man.
We're all learning here.
Yeah. I mean, and even if you're a self-proclaimed expert, you're still learning, you know. I follow a lot of stuff that the Shrimp King does now because I kind of got bit by the shrimp bug, and I really want to add some shrimp to this tank, I think. But, you know, that guy, every time he goes out to collect shrimp, he finds new species of shrimp. And they operate totally different than all the other shrimp that come out of that ecosystem. They might like some of the same water parameters, but it's a totally different organism. So if you're an invert or a fish expert and a new species is found, how are you automatically the expert? You know what I mean?
Right. Everyone's learning something new with this, because every little aspect is different. I feel like it's a lot of time it's changing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I looked at I look up stuff like, oh, I just search Google and like, oh, just random forums. Just people just jump on each other like, You're doing what, where, when? How is this in a 50-gallon? It needs to be in at least 600 gallons. Like, who has a 600-gallon tank? Who is that person?
Well, and it's not like they... And I always feel bad for the poster, in those forums, because it's not like you went out to the fish tour knowing that a common pleco is going to get possibly 3 to 4 feet long. Well, I'm going to put it in this 5-gallon tank because I'm an evil person. Like, we don't just know that. Now, should we do a little bit of research ahead of time? Absolutely.
But for some reason, if you're new and like the only thing you've been exposed to is like, oh, it's just you can put a beta in a beer bottle and it's going to be fine. Like,
right.
Okay, for those people who just like they've seen that, like, oh, sorry, so I can put these other fish that are equally sized in a small tank. Like, I had a common pleco in a 2-gallon tank. If I would have said that on any of those forums, I would have been crucified.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but like now I know better. But like at the time, I was like, yeah, it should be fine. I don't think it's going to be that big a deal.
Right.
And then it went horribly wrong, but I learned a lot along the way. But
I think that's one of the most important things about this hobby is, it I think it helps a little bit with at least for me, it helps a little bit with my humanity aspect, because I'm obviously an animal lover, and a lot of times when people talk or think about fish, they don't think about them as an animal, they think about them more as an object. It's something that I'm going to eat, or I'm going to look at a big aquarium, or it's the goldfish or the beta that's in the bowl, on somebody's kitchen counter. And, hopefully Aquarium Co-op hears this and gives us a little bit of sponsorship for this episode. But, I'm a big believer and a big fan of the idea that you are creating a miniature ecosystem in your home. And it's incredibly fascinating to watch these ecosystems flourish, and it's frustrating when they struggle, but it's one of the most rewarding hobbies that I've ever had, because there's been very few times in my life when I'm like, I have an issue, I should go get a snail. The snail will take care of this issue. But something trivial and minute like that, it's incredibly rewarding. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, that's one thing. Like, I didn't expect it to like it as much as I did. Like I got into it, I was like, oh yeah, it's my soon-to-be wife's beta. I'm just gonna, like, it wasn't due to hot. I went out, got some food, got some medicine, tried to take care of it, and then it just spiraled out from there. But like, I didn't anticipate that. But like, really having something you can just sit in front of, and like, it's a whole world that just exists in this glass box that you really can't. Like, I wouldn't see it any other way now. Like, because I used to just see fish at the pet store. I'd like walk through them, like, oh yeah, those are kind of cool. But seeing be able to create something that you can actually just sit in front of and just be like, transfixed to how this is their world now, and they don't feel out of place there. Mm-hmm. Like, they've made it their home, and you can just. Because like, I've kept, like, growing up, I kept like rodent stuff. Like, you have a hamster cage, and they just spend all their time running on a wheel because they can't explore anymore. They're not. But like, you put a fish in this little box, and it's just, it may be a lot smaller than they're used to, but they seemed pretty content with it. Mm-hmm.
Well, and especially when you get fish with personalities, like, when you watch a school of tetras school or shoal together, they're doing that in response to something. They're just not doing it.
Right.
Seeing, like, the cichlid that I have now, seeing it investigate and actually think about what it's investigating, that's a really satisfying and cool thing to watch, because it knows where it's at, but it sees something that it might not have thought about the last time that it saw it. So now it's going to investigate it. And it's just... It's incredibly relaxing for me to sit and watch this fish tank. Right.
And yeah, it's really interesting when you see the personality, because like, if you just wanted something pretty to look at, you can just get a wallpaper on or a screensaver and be like, oh, that's fine. But like, that's why I want to get that little puffer tank, because those guys are they're tiny, but they're super curious, and they eat snails. And I'm like, that'll just be so interesting as something different. But yeah, being able to just, like, you sit in front of your tank and they recognize you as you're the person that brings food. I may not know what you are. Mm-hmm. But when you sit in front of me, food shows up at the sky, and that makes me happy.
Right.
But so just seeing them all come out, like, because I have my tank on the timer just because I was trying to limit, because I would turn it on when I would leave for the day, and then when I get home from work after, I would turn it off. But that got so varied, I'd always forget that, like, sometimes, like, I'd have lights on for, like, 10 hours. I'm like, oh, that's not great for the plants and the algae. And
I fell asleep last night, and I fell asleep on the couch watching basketball, and I don't have a timer set up right now as much as I need to. My fish tank light was on for 19 hours.
Oh.
So
far so good.
Like you said, it didn't help the algae and it stressed the fish out a little bit, I'm sure, but it's those moments that it's like, I really need to be better at this, because I'm the creator of this miniature world.
Yeah, you're their god, essentially. You're their creator, and if you mess up or like, oh crap, I didn't realize the heater's been unplugged for a week. That's not ideal.
Right.
But yeah, it's so neat just to be able to create this little world and then be able to just kind of play with it and be like, I think there should be plants right here. That's where they are now. Mm-hmm. And how unfazed they are. Like, you can just move their whole world around. They're like, oh, it's over here now. Okay, cool. And they're just business as usual.
Right.
But yeah, I think once I finally get everything how I want it, like just today I was messing with an air pump to run all of my tanks. They're just off of one pump with a gang box instead of having separate air pumps for each one. Mm-hmm. And it's loud, but I'm trying to dampen it. But it's still nice just to be able to do a little something. And it's really soothing to be able to like kind of get out of your own head and like stress with like work and stuff and just like play around with like your fish. Mm-hmm. So I think when it's actually done, I'm just gonna be sitting down there and be like, now what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? Just sit there and just be like, because like sometimes I just don't notice what certain fish are doing just because I'll be going from one thing to another. But now when I can just like sit and be like, oh, I didn't realize those two fish are just like always together. Mm-hmm. Like my corridor is like, I have 3. Just because I didn't really realize at the time, I just got them at different points that like you should have at least a few of one type.
Right.
So I have like a stirby corridor, an albino, and like a panda, but they all hang out. Like I don't know if they do the same behavior, but they're always next to each other. And I'm like, well, it's probably fine. I know they'd probably be happier with more of their own, but for now they're doing good. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I feel like we've been talking for quite a while. What time are we at? 1:30. Yeah, that might be a little long. It's typically long for the shows I do. I know you usually do a little bit longer on yours. I don't know what was your record, like 4 hours on one of yours? Yeah,
we did it well. When we did the Infinity War one, that was like total. It was like 9 hours of podcasting, but just me sitting down, it's about 4 hours. I don't like to do that as much anymore. I like to get in and talk and get out.
Right. I feel like I don't think I could have that time to sit and like, especially because when you guys were doing like the live streams, like you were just at Dick's house for 6 hours one night after work, and you're like, I can't just be doing that every week. I need to see my wife and kid. Like,
right. Yep. When you gotta add sleep in there too. Gotta have sleep sometime. Right.
Yeah, that's basically when how it's been like the past couple weeks is like, as soon as Liz goes to bed, she goes to sleep early, and that's when I can't go to sleep, so I'll just go to the basement and just mess around with the fish stuff. Mm-hmm. Just I don't like to do it like while she's awake, just because we're usually doing something together, and I'm like, well, you're going to bed now, I have an hour and a half, I can go just do this, that, and the other, do the water change, which I think I still might do tonight. I was going to do it today, but it just got away from me. I don't really want to mess with it after work, because I ended up getting just a little bit wet just from doing it. It was get like a sleeve wet trying to do something, moving something, and I'm just like, I'll just do it now and then go to bed. Mm-hmm. But I think that'll do it. We've had a great conversation. I feel like we could just talk for days or just have a whole podcast with just us talking about it. But
well, we were talking about you and I maybe checking out Aquashella when it comes into Chicago at the end of the summer. Yes. So maybe we can sit down and have another conversation after that.
Definitely, and I feel like we both be doing something different in the next. The summer's going to change a lot, and I'm sure we'll be doing something different to report about our tanks. So, yeah, that'll be a good time to pick it back up and bring it back here, or there, or wherever. But yeah, so definitely thanks for being on the show. It's been a great conversation.
Thanks for having me. I always like being on your show.
Yeah, I think the last time we had the big news, this is just nothing crazy happened this week, just another fun episode of Puhr 360. There'll be credits after the show that'll do all the plugs, but I think that'll do it. Like I said, thanks again, Tyler. This has been Puhr 360 talking about the aquarium hobby. Thanks, guys. You've been listening to Puhr 360. You can find us on the socials at Puhr 360 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find us and all the other podcasts on our network at JourneyIntoComics.com or early access at Patreon.com/JourneyIntoComics. You can find us on all podcasting platforms like CastBox, Podbean, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, and many others.